ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Uplift, being brought to you by the Coltrane Conservatory of the Arts. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about a subject that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We got so much positive feedback from it until we're going to sort of redo the program on the law of universal cause and effect. So I'd like for you to contact somebody, have them come on the air and let them know that this program is being aired at this time and that you can really get yourself into a mindset that will benefit you tremendously. Okie dokie, my name is Joe Pace III. I am the director of the Coltrane Conservatory of the Arts. We are a music school. We do some recording, and we also do some tutoring in math and English. Now, our pre-program in math and English has ended. We used to have a program on Saturday for math and English mostly for little ones in basic mathematics. In order to come there now and get training in mathematics or English, you'll need to actually go through one of our fee-based programs. And so I'd like to let you know that we've had some people calling, asking about the old program on Saturday. But that's been discontinued at this time. Now, we had a recital about 2 weeks ago, and man, oh man, was it beautiful. Our student musicians are playing their hearts out. They worked hard to get to the skill level that they're at, and they put on a beautiful performance for their families, their mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and cousins and aunts and uncles and friends. And we had about 50 people there, and so it was really something nice. Now we'll have another one coming up in December, so you want to be listening for that as we go forward. Again, those of you who would like to play instruments and who have pianos and things of that nature around the house that you have been wanting to learn how to play for many years, come on and give us a call. You may call us here at the studio. The phone number is on the screen. Or you may call us at 773-891-1875. Okie dokie. Again, that phone number is 773-891-1875. Or you can get us right here at the station. So you get the number right off of your monitor there, and give us a call. So right now we're going to talk to you for a while about this subject, the law of universal causality. Now, like I told you, we talked about this before. In fact, I think our first show was on this. Our first show for this season was on this particular subject. Like I said, I got a tremendous amount of feedback from individuals, and we wanted to redo it because people need to know what they're feeding into their minds is actually what's creating their entire life experience. Okay, so let's get started. Now, we first of all want to draw attention to a few things that are on this sheet right here that you see right there. I hope you can see it very well on your TV monitor. Some of you have those 42-inch television sets, and I know you can see it very well. Now, let's take a look at these. We're going to start up top right there with the law of universal law of causality. Now, if you look there, you'll see that first one, if you can see it on your screen. The first thing there says, the causes we make today shape the future of our tomorrow. Now, what does that mean? That essentially means that you can actually figure out what your future is. You can actually predict your future. We can predict our future, once again, by what we are doing today. Now, think about that. The causes that we're making today will shape the future of tomorrow. And that means that we can actually predict, forecast, or whatever you want to call it, where we're going to be next week, next year, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. We can predict that by what we are doing today. Now the question is, are we doing something of value? Okay? First thing about it, what do we think about the things that we do in life that have value? Well, you might say that making more money is valuable. That's true. That's certainly true. Having a good, stable family environment, having a wonderful spouse, all of those things are valuable. All those things have great value. Okay? Minding one's own business and staying and keeping our noses out of our neighbor's business. That has value. Treating people the way that we want to be treated. That has value. And reaching out to those who are less fortunate and offering a helping hand to them. Now you're talking about some value that has super value. Because what we do for another human being is extraordinarily important. Extraordinarily important. What we do for others. Because what we do for others help to make this a better world for everyone. I hope this is making some sense to you. In other words, the absolute greatest cause that we can make is doing something to lift up another individual, to bring some joy and happiness into their life. This is the absolute and the greatest cause that we can make for our own life. Now, someone might say, well, how does it help me? Well, it helps us because what we do in this world, what we think, what we say, and what actions we take create our entire existence. There's nothing on the outside of that. That's why it's so important to be reading all the time. Something of value. Something that has truism in it. Something that is uplifting. That's why all the major religions ask for their followers to read from certain kinds of principles and doctrines and things of that nature. Because what happens is we're flooding our minds with value in most cases. We're flooding our minds with things that will help us to bring joy and happiness into our own life. Somebody once said that, and I believe an empty mind, like an empty vessel, is the devil's workshop. That means that because there is nothing in, see, the mind has to be preoccupied with something. The mind has to constantly have something in it. If it doesn't have anything in it, something eventually will come into it. And this is why it's so important for us to understand, excuse me, that it is important to master the mind, so that when things come into our minds that we know are not good things, things like tearing down somebody else, being over judgmental, wanting to do something that we know is not right, saying something that is not right, to be honest with you, I'm really concerned about some of the movies that people allow to infiltrate their minds. Because some of this stuff is so egregious until once it saturates the mind begins to, to, to embrace these concepts. And once we embrace these concepts, ladies and gentlemen, they become part of us. We have to start embracing beautiful things. We have to start reading. You know, in the religion that I am in, we're asked to read 20 minutes a day of something powerful, something that's going to lift up our lives and whatnot. You know, we're asked to, at a minimum of 20 minutes a day, okay? If you can do 40 minutes, if you can do 60 minutes, if you can do 2 or 3 hours, do it. Because what's happening, we're feeding at that point the spiritual side of our existence. It's one thing to chow down on big sirloin steak, baked potatoes, broccoli, you know. This is good stuff. Baked fish, whatever. But there's a side of us that needs to be fed that we are neglecting to some extent. In fact, to a large extent. Because what we put into our minds, that determines who we are. Because eventually we're going to act on that. See, eventually we're going to talk about that. And the words and the actions put with the thoughts, you now have the holistic plan of action. And once you get that plan of action going like that, literally nothing can stop us. We become unstoppable. We become like shooting stars. Somebody said, shoot for the moon. And we're always gonna fall on high. Even if we're just reading something like that, shoot for the moon. So shoot for the moon, anybody can read that or say that. But that's something beautiful and something powerful that's going into our mind. And this is where we want to be with the kinds of concepts that we allow into our mind. Because when we allow negative thoughts to pervade our minds, guess what? It's highly likely that negative words are going to follow that. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It's highly likely also that negative action will follow that. Now, what I'm talking about here today is allowing ourselves the opportunity to change what's being fed to our mind. And we can do that. Every day that we wake up, we can make another determination that we're going to watch what's being fed into our mind. And then, even if because nothing happens overnight, and all these processes are lifetime processes, we never get to the point where we can say to ourselves, oh gee whiz, I have finally, completely and totally mastered my mind. I don't have to worry anymore about negative thoughts because I've been doing it, I've been practicing it, and I found finally now I've succeeded at becoming an expert at it. There's no such thing as that. We're in this world, and from the moment that we come into this world to the moment that we leave out of this world, we have to be thinking about how do I become a better person? how do I master this mind of mine? How do I avoid allowing negative thoughts to take me over? How do I avoid allowing negative words and actions to take me off? This is not something that you become an expert at one day. It's something that we get better at, don't get me wrong, and something that we can get very, very good at. But it's not something that we get to the point where we said, okay, I am now the expert. Okay, I have now risen to the point where I don't have to work on it anymore. Because most of you understand one thing, and that is that you and me, we are all the masters of our own destiny. See, I'm going to say something here that may shock some of you that are listening. We are putting too much of what we should be doing on God. See, now I'm using that term because I know that most people know what that means, you know. And I usually like to say the single source, because I don't want to get into, you know, anything having to do with swaying one religion against another, this, that, or the other. But I do want to say that this single source, which we will call from here on out, because you know what I'm talking about, we're putting way too much responsibility on this single source. And guess what? The single source is saying, oh no, that's your responsibility. And this is why many of us are struggling. Because we want to put all of this on the single source when the single source has already given us everything we need to deal with anything that we need to deal on or with. This is a fact. So you see, people, what we want to do, listen, I certainly want everybody, because I really believe in it, to continue meditating. Continue your prayers, you know. Continue doing whatever you've been doing in order to connect with this single source. Because the more we connect with this single source, the more we harmonize with it, the better off our lives become. You see, but so many times we put forth a little 5-minute prayer, sometimes 30 seconds, and we expect all of these things to happen just because we made a request. Life does not work that way. We have to do all that we can in this world, whatever that might be, making phone calls, writing letters, punching a clock, and working. We have to do all that we can do, all that we are expected to do, really. And then we'll find that our prayers will start to be answered. But what a lot of people are doing is they want to put all of this, they want to put everything on the single source. They want to come, they want to kneel, some of us want to kneel by our bedsides. And we want to say, oh, can I have this? What about that? This? And oh yes, you know I need this. And I'm praying so hard, please give me this. Only to find out that the prayer wasn't answered. Because we didn't think about all the things that we need to do ourselves in order to get that. Because the single source is not going to do anything. Well, it's going to actually do what the single source does, and that is to put the opportunities before us. And sometimes the opportunities are behind stumbling blocks or obstacles. And we have to get beyond those obstacles in order to get to the point that we need to get to. And when we do that, in many cases, in all cases, we're stronger and better off after having done that. That's why we need to look at obstacles as though in the same way that we look at blessings. Now, if somebody might say, that man must be crazy. We have to look at obstacles in the same way that we look at blessings. Because the obstacles actually, once removed, the blessing is behind the obstacle. Once removed. And guess what? The requirement for us to get this blessing or this benefit in our life is largely due to us being able to remove the obstacle. Because what happens with us, things are being done in this world in order to make us better, to make us stronger. And these obstacles do that more probably than anything. Because if somebody came in here right now and said, sir, I'm giving you $1 million to do more over at the music school, to service more of the people in that community, to provide more free programming, that would be something good. But it would not be like if I put a plan together to earn that. And don't get me wrong, sometimes things will just fall into your lap. And when things fall into your lap, they're not just falling into your lap. That's based on causes that you've made. And out of nowhere, the prayer was answered. The effect was manifested. Okay? That happens. You know, I talk about people winning big lotteries and things of that type, and other things that people get that they don't feel like, they've directly earned. We don't feel as though they've directly earned those things. All of these things have been earned by these individuals at some point, in some place in this universe. Every bit of it, because you cannot have a cause like an effect like that in your life unless you have a cause like that in your life. Because cause and effect are directly proportionate to one another. This is why if we err, we cause trouble, trouble has a way of coming back to us. And this is why when we do good things in life, the good has a way of coming back to us in direct proportion to the good that we put out. So we want to make sure that we understand these rules of the universal law of causality. Now we're going to go back to something here that I want to point out to you. Now, if you look at number 2 on this list here, it says, whether good or bad, what we do in life is bound to return. Now, this point here is about the strictness of cause and effect. So there's no such thing as a cause being made, whether or not it's by thought, deed, or action. I'm sorry, whether or not it's by thought, words, or action. Okay? There's no such thing as a thought, as a cause being made, and that no effect is generated. In fact, the effect is generated as soon as the cause is made. Now, I didn't say that the effect was manifested. I said it was generated. Okay? It may not be manifested until nobody knows, because we have no idea. We have no idea how that works, you know. But and that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that we don't get into thinking that what I'm trying to do is useless. It's never going to pan out because of the fact that it's not panning out in some time frame that we have determined, that we have predetermined, you know. The bottom line is we never know. I mean, listen, set goals, folks, but you need to set goals. Your life needs to know where it needs to go. That's another thing. People don't give their life any direction. I have to tell my life, where do I want to go? And my life starts to make that happen. Okay? Now the time frame for making that happen is largely mystical. We don't really know. But we do know that if we continue down that road, working day in and day out, gradually it will come into our life. There's no way that it cannot come into our life. It's impossible for it not to come into life. When I say the universal law of causality, that's exactly what it is. You could be on some planet, I could be on some planet zillions of years and miles away from here, light years and miles away from here. And let me tell you something, that law is universal and it holds up. What goes around comes around. And we need to be very clear on that. So I'm going to deal with one other point here. We're coming to the end of this discussion. Let's take a look at this right here. The third one says, thought, speech, deeds, these bring heaven or hell on earth. Well, you might say, wait a minute here, sir. Hell is in the center of the earth, being under the auspices of this red-tailed man with the big ears and the fork in his hand, the pitchfork in his hand. Somebody else might say, well, heaven is up in the clouds there with the white angels and their white feathers. Okay? Well, let me tell you something. You may believe like that, and that's okay. I have no problem with that. If that's your belief, then that's your belief. But I can tell you one thing, and don't ever forget it. There's a hell and a heaven right here on this earth. And those of us who are on this earth are living in it, breathing in it, every day. Okay? And I can tell you this, that those of us who think that simply because we're able to do something and get away with it for a little while, we don't realize that there is a universal law. Even if we avoid the laws of man, if we're able to somehow finesse our way through the laws of man, the laws of the universe, they are strict and nobody can avoid them. And so what we want to do, we want to make certain that we understand these principles are universal. It's not like they're for me and not for you, or for you and not for me. And we need to start to master our minds. We need to start to watch what we put into our minds. We need to begin to disown things. Sometimes we have to tell ourselves, no, I'm not, don't bring that to me today. You have to tell your mind that. You have to speak to your mind. You have to think 3, 4, 5 times before you say something. And you certainly have to think a bunch of times before you do something, okay? Because all that stuff eventually comes back. Now, we're going to close today, and like I said, people wanted to hear more about that, and we did that. We're going to be on next week again at 7:30. We'd like for you to tune in and tell somebody about our program. This is a new program. It has a new spin to it, rather. We've been on the air for a while, but this year we're speaking on principles of life, and this program is called Uplift, and it's being brought to you by the Coltrane Conservatory of the Arts. So give us a call if you want to, 773-891-1875. We're going to see you on next Wednesday. Take care and have a nice day.